my family, some members of my family, and how they interacted with a couple of the businesses here in Auburntown in the early 1900s. About probably 15 to 17 years ago, my great-grandfather ran a blacksmith shop here in Auburntown, and I wanted to know where that shop was at. And I couldn't find anybody that could tell me where that shop was located. My dad didn't know, he couldn't tell anything about it. So I was doing a lot of genealogy then, I was in the courthouse a lot, so I looked up deeds. And that's where I found where my great-grandfather's blacksmith shop was located. And I traced those deeds from both ways, back as far as I could and forward to present day. The tract that we're talking about is where, and it is in the historical book here, and I actually learned something. I learned several things reading the documentary that y'all put in on these businesses. I didn't learn much about my grandfather's blacksmith shop, but I learned a lot about the Jonesville Garage. But the tract that we're talking about, if you look in the history book, is number 11, called the Lower Garage Tract. It's where Jonathan Warner owns now, where the church is at, where Rita's hairstyling was for years. That is where my great-grandfather's blacksmith shop sat. I found a few references to it through, remember when Mr. Dunn did the Oakland Jewel, the transcript of Oakland Jewel, when he went and got all of that, Jones's shop is referenced in that transcript. That even intrigued me even more. Where was Jones's shop? So I traced deeds back on that tract of land, which is number 11, the Lower Garage Tract, in our history book. And I was able to trace that tract back to 1889. February 1889, John and Lucinda Galloway sold that tract to J.C. McAdoo. J.C. McAdoo kept that tract for 9 years. And then in February 1898, J.C. McAdoo and his wife sold that tract to J.G. and W.T. Talley. They kept that tract for 5 years. And then in October of 1903, J.G. and W.T. Talley sold that tract to S.H. Jones. That is Samuel Houston Jones. That's my great-grandfather's brother, younger brother. He only kept it for 1 year. And then in October of 1904, he sold the tract to my great-grandfather, Manny Jones.
Manny?
Manny, M-A-N-E-Y.
Let me guess, for $1.
No.
That's how my uncles
Oh,
always
here,
did.
now, y'all don't know, if you go up there and look on my table, there's about 5 checkbooks of stuff that I keep money on. I'm a money guru. I love how you gonna get some return on your investment. So I wrote, and when I did these deeds, I was always looking for what they give for it. So Manny Jones gave his brother $200 for that lot. And that deed specifies that there is a shop. It says lot and shop. So the shop was already present for the $200.
But we don't know who built it in
Don't know
there?
who built it. I do not know any, but those deeds back to 1889, I was not able to secure when the shop was built or who built it or when they built it. I just know my great-grandfather Manny bought it in October of 1904.
Well, when did Samuel Houston die? 1903?
1903. He bought it 1 year before that.
Okay, 1 year,
Right.
yeah.
So I'm also going to incorporate into this program some of my family members. So Manny Jones, who's my great-grandfather, he was born in 1868, and here is a picture. This is the oldest picture that I have of Manny and his wife, Susie Davenport Jones. They were married.
I gotta make your pictures, so hold it
Don't spell the code.
up. Okay.
I'm not a picture person.
I know,
Go ahead.
I know it, but
I know in front of you, you're gonna have a
You
picture.
know it.
You're gonna have to.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's gonna be in the paper.
All right.
Thank you.
So, Manny and Susan. Susan was the daughter of William Davenport. This goes back to Absalom. Susie's dad was William Davenport. His dad was Warren Davenport. His dad was Absalom. So she's about a fourth generation from the first Davenport that moved into here. But this is the first picture and the oldest picture that I have. This picture is probably, this is their first 3 children. This is probably taken around 1898 because this is their 3rd child as a baby who was born in 1898. Fast forward, the next picture I have is around 1906. This is them with all 7 of their children.
7.
It
Now,
went from 3 to 7.
yeah, and just a few, they're all just like people who had kids back then. They're all 1 to 2 years
Yeah,
apart. Most of them
yeah.
are about 2 years apart.
Or Irish twins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And what, and who is that now?
this is Manny and Susan.
Manny?
Manny again, Manny, M-A-N-E-Y, Manny Jones and his family.
M-E-Y. Because that picture's gonna be in the paper, so I need to get it right. It's Manny and, what, Jones?
Susie.
Susie.
All right, the little boy, I'll pass this picture around. The little boy standing beside his mother is my grandfather, Paul Jones, who was the 6th. Now, yeah, and I'm going to get up to where some of you guys know who some of these are. The 2nd child was Jesse, and I know Bobby
Yeah, we
and
know.
Jimmy probably remembers Jesse too. You do
Jesse
too.
was fine name.
Jesse and Miss Bonnie Mae.
Jesse.
Jesse Jones, Miss Bonnie Mae.
You don't remember them, Jimmy?
He remember about Jess, didn't
I
he?
remember Bonnie Mae.
That's where.
Well,
Did you say Jesse or Jack?
Jesse.
Jesse, oh yeah.
Yeah, Jesse Jones.
I thought you said Jack.
Oh,
Yeah, they had a farm. Jesse owns a farm. I'll get to that here.
And they're all right.
On Heritage Creek. Who? That's exactly right. He lived in that home. He sure did. The baby that Susie is holding is Mary Jones Patterson. She's Bobby Jones Patterson's mother. Slick, as a lot of people around here knew.
yeah.
But I'll pass.
Yeah, where did you get those pictures?
Family.
Yeah, handed down.
These 2 got handed down. Yeah. This one, can't believe where I found it, and that it's still in this shape. The old home up here on Sam's Fork where my dad grew up, where Helen and Paul lived.
Okay.
Of course, after they moved from there, my grandmother moved from there in '79. Probably around, it's when we were getting ready to tear the home down, around the time that my dad retired, would have been in the early 2000s, probably around 02, 03. We were cleaning the house out. There was an old cedar chest there where rats had crawled in and out. This picture was in that cedar chest.
I bet you had a
Great
fit. I bet
Oh,
you had a
yeah.
fit.
Well, I knew exactly. I had seen a copy of it, but I'd never found the original picture of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember that house. Didn't it just stay vacant a long time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my grandmother moved there from '79.
She moved over here.
She moved over here on Back Street,
Yeah.
and then we tore it down. It was after my dad retired, we tore it down and built that gazebo that you see.
I love that
there.
lamp on that table back there.
Yeah.
I'd like to have my hands on that lamp.
One thing about that picture that always intrigued me, of course, they've got their best clothes on, but every one of the kids are barefooted. And none of them got shoes on.
No,
You know, of course, I think it was probably pretty standard for back in that
so it
day.
was summertime.
Now, this picture here, this picture is the one that I had that's in the history book. This is Manny Jones and Paul. This picture is circled around 1915. Paul was born in 1904, so you can see he's 10, 12, 14 years old in that picture during the time. And I don't know that for sure, but I think that's standing in the doorway of the shop here on Main Street where his shop was at.
Oh, that you said that was listed in that deed?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Now this picture here,
There's somebody making white oak baskets back there, aren't they? Did you ever see that?
No, didn't pay
Or a
attention
dog,
to that.
or maybe it's a dog. There's somebody else back
It's a picture.
In the basket or a dog.
It's a picture.
To me, it looks like a picture on the door.
Yes, that's what I think it is also.
Well, I thought
Because
somebody
it's
said
just-
that first.
it's
I thought it was
just this
making one of
big.
those baskets, and then, no,
Yes.
it's a dog.
Now
It's a
this picture, the first picture, the oldest picture I've got, you saw them setting. They're setting by a rock wall by the side of their home. Their home set right where the double wide trailer sits right here, right in front of the Church of Christ.
I don't remember that one.
Right beside where Hop and Mabel lived. All right. The first few years, you know the picture I have here, because the first few years when we were in the historic site, all Mary did was scan pictures about the whole meeting.
Take vacation days or whoever showed
Yes,
up at the meeting.
meeting with
send
pictures. Well, there's a picture come across, and it is of Kathleen and Carl Hawkins. This is taken in the yard of the Hawkins' home there where Hop and Mabel, right in front of the church. But in the background is my great-grandparents' home. That picture is in 1898 is
How
taken.
wonderful.
They were taken right beside this rock wall with their home, the corner of their
Was that
home in the
Mabel's
background.
picture? Was that Mabel's picture, Mary?
It was Mabel, I think it was Mabel. It was Mabel or David, one of
Well, I mean,
them.
she
Yes.
brought, one year, that she brought all these old pictures for us to see at the Historical Society, had them all over the table, and they're all old pictures. That is so wonderful.
Now, that home stood until Tim Cooper and Teal.
Susan Jones.
Tim Cooper and Teal tore that home down when they moved the double wide trailer that's sitting in there now. They tore that old home
Is
down.
it Susan or Susie?
It's both. It's either one. It's
Oh, either one.
listed as both. It
It says
depends on which
Susan.
census that you look at. Now, that rock wall where that first picture right here is taken, that rock wall was there till just a few years ago. A few years
I
ago,
remember it.
they come down the hill and built another retaining wall and filled all of that in, and that's where you see the garage. Now, the garage that's built right beside that double wide trailer.
Okay.
Now, the double wide
I
sat
remember
there
that rock wall.
since
was
probably the
back
early
there.
80s. Whenever Teal and Tim were married, they bought that lot and moved that double wide in. But that's my great-grandparents' old home place.
Who's the last person lived in that house?
I can't tell you that, Jim. I remember the home standing there, but I do not remember.
I remember the house being there.
I don't remember who.
I think it was a single lady, when it, an older lady.
Whose house did you say this was currently?
The home in the background there, Bobby, is my great-grandparents' home, Manny and Susan Davenport, or Susan Jones.
Was
That's
her-
where they raised them 7 kids at.
Raised 7 kids.
Joe Harris's house, the Cooper house, was it built later after this one?
No, Tim told me he tore this home down and put that double wide trailer right there. Now, I'm not sure,
Is this a
that may be the home after, this goes back to early 1900s. And I'll get to those dates here in just a second.
This is not the Joe Harris house.
It could be, Bobby, I'm not sure. It's the home that's set right in front of the Church of Christ, right beside the Hawkins' home.
Okay, so it
Where
is.
Upper side.
On the upper
On
side.
the upper side,
On the
Bobby,
upper
not the lower
side.
side.
Yeah, on the upper side.
I just was missing the two houses down here when I saw the picture.
And
Okay.
so that's where
It's on
they
the
live.
upper side
And
of
raised
Hop-
7 kids,
of-
raised 7
of
kids.
Mabel and
Going up the hill.
going up the hill.
That would
yeah,
be
okay.
where we know in the 50s who the.
I don't know.
Was
For my time there.
Was Susie's,
I'm Tim's age.
Before your time?
Yeah, I'm Tim's age, Bobby. Tim and I are 64 models.
it was Susan's maiden name Davenport?
She
Because
was.
you keep,
Yes.
Susan Davenport.
So Manny, he bought the blacksmith shop in 1904. In 1903, they bought that home. I found the deed where they purchased that home. Now, I think they were living there before then because the picture is the late 1800s. but they actually purchased that home. I found the deed in 1903. So Manny, he ran the blacksmith shop there from 1904 to 1928 when he died. He died in July of 28 at 60 years old.
Oh dear.
All right, but now his family was really susceptible to tuberculosis. There was 4 out of the 7 kids, there was 4.
Bobby Jones's mother died of that.
Yes, that she is one of the 4 sisters. All 4 of the sisters. There's 4 girls and 3 boys. All 4 of the girls, 3 of them never made it out of their 20s with tuberculosis. One of them died. Odera Campbell died at 42. They all died, and I'm pretty sure Manny. I never have found a death certificate on him. That's back before death certificates.
Tuberculosis, so there wasn't no medicine.
No.
You said he died in
1928.
there should be.
One for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look. I'll go back and try to find that. But he died in July of 1928.
And then wonder what Susie did back then, man, it didn't work, or they didn't have much money.
All right. He died in July the 28th of 1928, September the 28th, 2 months later. And I hate this, but this is how everything is worded back then. No woman's name's put on anything back then. It was always the man's name. She was Mrs. R.M. Jones.
Yeah, I remember.
Mrs. R.M. Jones sold that lot to, and this is where it starts in the history book. She sold that lot to Jesse Jones, James Albert O'Neill, and C.S. Hawkins for $600. That's on the deed. So they purchased it in 1904. She sold it in 1928 and tripled her money. That's how I look at things. How you pretty good return on your investment in land right there, you know, in 24 years. Huh?
She sold it to Jesse Jones, C.S. Hawkins, and who?
James Albert O'Neill, J.A. O'Neill. All right, that's when the Jones O'Neill garage came about through that partnership.
That's just
Yes.
amazing.
Now this, of course, this picture here is the one that's in the history book that I had. That got passed down through me, through Jesse, to my dad, to me. And of course, that's the picture that's that Bobby got, that's in the history book also. Now, a brief history. I don't have a history of James Albert O'Neill or C.S. Hawkins, but I do have a brief history of Jesse Jones. Jesse was the second child. He was born in 1895. He's the second child of Manny and Susie Davenport Jones. I found some interesting stuff with him. In the 1910 census, he is listed under his mom and dad, but he also, under the occupation column of the 1910 census, he's listed as a blacksmith at 14 years old. His brother Grayton is also listed as a blacksmith at 12 years old. Now,
So they just worked, I guess.
well, yeah, everybody
had
worked
kids
back
to
then.
put 'em to work.
Work, exactly.
That's why you had kids.
It wasn't
So
no-
did they go to school?
It wasn't no,
Did they go to school?
yes.
And did
Yes.
that, you only probably went to school a little while. No.
No, but I mean,
I mean, it's a few months and when.
a couple of years back, this got in the courier too. And I'm getting to where Jess and Miss Bonnie Mae lived over here, where Ken and Kimberly Honeycutt live now.
Yeah.
They were up in the attic of that old barn, and out fell her 1919 report card from Auburn School, which was my granddad's report card from Paul Jones. Now my aunt, she didn't know me, didn't know who to give it to. They put it on Facebook, and she took it to the jewelry store and gave it to Joanne the next day. So Joanne actually has, I have a copy of it, but she has the actual report card. And I didn't get that for show and tell in October, I tried to,
Yeah.
and bring it. But back to Jesse Jones. He is in the history book as a World War I veteran. He was drafted on September 22nd, 1917. into the Army. He served in E Company, 322nd Regiment's 81st Division in the European theater during World War I. He got out of the Army, he came back to Auburntown, and on December 26, 1920, he married Bonnie Mae Robinson, who was the daughter of Will and Stella Fight Robinson. She's a prosperity lady. They got married in December. The following month, in January of 1921, Jesse purchased a home from Robert Robertson, the president of the Bank of Auburntown at the time. A home described as being located on lands joining Dr. B.R. McKnight. So they bought the home right here behind the McKnight home. Now that's where I remember them as a child. Now Jesse passed away when I was 4. I don't have a lot of memories of him. Just one or two. I remember his funeral for some reason. I don't know why I remember his funeral for unusual. Everybody took pictures back then of people laying in the casket, which I thought was unusual. I actually have those pictures. Why I remember that as a 4-year-old, I don't know, but I remember the man standing up in the chair, taking a picture of him laying in the casket in Woodbury Funeral Home. Now, Miss Bonnie Mae, different story. I was on teenage years, maybe it was, I didn't go look up her death date, but she lived on up in the 70s and 80s, and I remember Miss Bonnie Mae. Oh, well, one of the sweetest ladies that you will ever meet.
Hit her up every Halloween.
I'm telling you.
Trusted her treats, didn't you?
Now, they raised 3 kids right here in town, and Jesse worked at the Jones O'Neill Garage, which is where I'm going with this in just a second. Jesse was a lifelong member of the Auburn Baptist Church. I'm sure you went to church with her, and Miss Bonnie Mae as a kid. He became a deacon at the church in 1926. He became a deacon of that church at 31 years old. And he was a deacon until he died in 1968. And he's buried at Odom Cemetery. Manny and Susan's also buried at Odom Cemetery. So I've got about 3 generations of family at Odom Cemetery. That's why I help take care of it now.
Now they had a son named Kerry that was killed, right?
They did.
You're gonna get to that.
Kerry, no, I wasn't going to go into their
Yeah,
kids.
that's
but
what I remember.
I was going to
So
go back to the
handsome.
business part side of it. But Kerry was in the Navy in the Korean War. Yes, he was
He was a
not.
pilot.
I'll say
In
they got
the
killed
Navy,
there.
no, I have a picture of Kerry in the Navy and the leggings. He was in the Navy, I think, during the Korean War, and then he transferred to the Air Force. He was in the Navy first,
He
and
was
then
in
went.
World War II, wasn't
He married a Maggie, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was in the Navy in
No.
World War II,
He
and
married
then
Nicholson.
he was in the Korean War, and then he started,
And as an Air
Air
Force.
Force.
Okay, so I'm learning a little something about my family
Yeah,
here.
he got
But then he
in
was
the Air
killed
Force.
in 1956 in Denver, Colorado.
I can remember
with,
that, so I was on.
My dad talked about that they actually had his visitation in the foyer of Jesse and Bonnie Mae's house here.
I remember the funeral, they had that gun salute.
The 21 gun salute. Yeah, they had 3 kids, Kerry, Faye,
Yeah,
who married the McAdoo.
yeah.
Now that's David, Russell, Bill's parents. And then their youngest son was Mac.
who did not want to be called McKnight,
No.
but that's who.
Benjamin McKnight, but Mac only. Yes, I do remember that
I
about
think
him.
he wound up
And if you-
legally changing his name.
And if you caught him after a few cocktails, he would tell you in a heartbeat that he didn't call it that. But that's my family history with these 2 businesses. But back to the garage, back to the Jones O'Neill Garage. So Jesse, James Albert, and C.S. Hawkins bought it in 1928. They kept it, all 3 partnership, until March of 1937, and Jesse Jones and James Albert O'Neill bought C.S. Hawkins' 1/3 interest. So then they were just dual partners in that business from March of 1937 until November of 1944. In November of 1944, Jesse sold his half interest to McKinley Robinson for $2,000. So here I go again on my return on the investment. All right, they give $600 for it in 1928, but in 1944 he sold half of it for $4,000. He got a pretty good return on his money.
Yeah, but they bought it for 600. Split
$600.
three ways.
Three ways, $200.
Yeah.
But at some point in there, and it's not in the deed that C.S. Hawkins sold his 1/3 interest. It's not in the deed what they actually give him for that 1/3. Those are all handwritten, and some of it's hard, but there is no dollar figure in that one. So that was in November of 1944. In December of 1944, James Albert O'Neill sold his half to McKinley Robinson. So McKinley Robinson was the sole owner as of December of 1944, and he gave James Albert O'Neill $2,000. So he gave $4,000 for that garage tract in November and December of 19, and he was the sole owner, which I thought was pretty. If you go from 1928 to 1944, it's only 16 years. It went from $400 or $600, $200 to $4,000.
Wow.
But Auburntown was a thriving community in those years, World War II years. So what happened, just like Murfreesboro, the real estate and stuff around here just skyrocketed. And, you know, especially right here in town, that went from the horse and buggy, shoeing a horse, to the car, everybody pushed with gas. Of course, Jesse Jones and James Albert, they were also a car dealership. They sold cars there. That was some interesting stuff that I read about the robbery and car getting stolen. I never had read that.
Let me ask you a question. Did he live on Marshall Creek? They had in Marshall Creek at one time. They said something keeps coming back to me, that he owned land up there about where Jimmy lived.
Not to my
I can't
knowledge.
confirm that with this.
Not to my knowledge.
I keep
And he may, I'm not sure. Now, my family's around here since between 1810 and 1820, and there's a lot
Well,
of
going
land
to days
deeds.
you would have run
You
across
know,
it.
I did not run across anything where he owned. Now, Jesse owned, that's where you were referring to a while ago. He owned a farm. After he got out of the garage business, he farmed the rest of his life from 1944 to 1968 when he died. He had that farm up that Charles Ritchie owns now. Charles actually bought that after.
Yeah, from Miss Bonnie Mae.
From Miss Bonnie Mae.
About 1968.
Somewhere around that. I think Charles bought it right after he come back from Vietnam.
Because Miss Bonnie Mae said me and Eddie's getting married. Miss Bonnie Mae called me and wanted to sell me the house and sell that to us. I wish I bought it, but we bought a house trailer and moved it on Buck's property. But she called me
Wanting
and
to sell it.
wanting us, because she knew we was getting married and you had to have a
Wanna
place
set up
to live.
household
So that's
and
when I knew it was 1968.
Okay. I knew it sold not long after Jesse
That's what
died.
I mean, that's what I recall. Now, you might find it different, but.
No,
fixing to get
you're
married.
right there, Donna. Yes, that is right the time after he died. They sold the farm, but they kept on. Max sold the house over here. Of course, Faye and Carrie had already preceded her in death. And Max sold the home over here.
Yeah, we often wished we'd have bought it, but,
after
because
she
it's
died.
skyrocketing it up too.
But
I think it's $20,000, $20,000 what she wanted, I think.
back to the garage track here, so I don't run this on over into bedtime here. McKinley Robinson owned it all from 1944 to October of 1953. And he sold the garage in October 1953 to James Marshall Donald for $4,850. So he gave $4,000 for it, and 9 years later he sold it for $4,850. The real estate wasn't going up during them years.
$100 per year.
There was no price on these transactions. And then April of 1979, Wayne and Elaine sold the other half interest to Thomas Earl and Ofa. So Thomas Earl and Ofa owned that tract from 1979 to 1984. In May of 1984, they sold that tract to Danny Nichols for $3,000. So Danny actually owned the garage tract
And
the
store.
and the store. That's correct. And then in July of 1999 is when Danny and Dean sold the tract, both tracts, the store tract and the garage tract, to Rita and Ernest Davis. That deed there is where the Fight store, or where the Fusen store and the Jones O'Neill garage tracts are combined in that 1999 deed when Danny and Dean sold.
So it became one track.
Yeah.
So it became one tract, which is the vacant lot you see beside Rita's hairstyling now, which is the church.
On this side, okay,
Yeah,
it's the church,
look on
okay.
this side, there is a grassy area. That's where the Fusen store is at. I also tracked that track back, and I'm not gonna get into that one
Well, that's
here.
very interesting.
But I tracked all that track from 1959? No, I need to go back further, from 1951 to 1999. I tracked who owned that one too. I got over there in the courthouse and started running across all these deeds, looking for that track where the Jones O'Neill garage was, and I ended up tracking the Fusen store track and the Buck Cooper track. I've got deeds. So if you want to see some deeds on those three tracks, I got them all right here, and traced them back as far as I could with the time that I had. But that's just a brief history of some. Some of it is in the history book. Said I learned some of it. It's how my family ties into that track and a couple of the older businesses here in town. Anybody look at that picture there? Anybody know who Bonnie Bale is? With my dad?